Mr. Mike Amine. How are you, sir?
Doing great. How are you, Ryan?
Outstanding. Thank you for doing this. I wanted to start with, you may find it odd, but I want to start with your father, actually. I've had a really fun time reading about his career from Beirut to the United States and really living the American dream. Take me back to your household growing up when you were like 9 or 10 years old. How many siblings did you have? What was the atmosphere like growing up in the Amine household?
Well, I will tell you this. I grew up with a total of 9 siblings, including me, and there was never a dull moment in that 1,400 square foot house. My dad had to add a bedroom after he came over to the U.S. in 1967. I was a little over a year old, and I was born actually in Beirut. But there was never a dull moment in that Amin household when I was 9 or 10 years old. What's interesting is I think my mom and my oldest sister were pregnant at the same time with my younger brother, Ralph. And so there was never more than, I guess, 8 siblings in the house, not 9, because when he came on, when she had him, my oldest sister, Hoda, had already moved out. She got married. But yeah, we squeezed into that 4-bedroom house quite well, and never a dull moment. I had 5 older sisters, so you could only imagine just the back and forth, kind of like the Brady Bunch way back in the day, right? Everybody's always got a little quarrel going on, and especially right around dinner time. But it was I wouldn't trade it in for the world. We were a very tight-knit family. My mom and dad were the patriarchs of just they gave us a good life. My dad was a laborer. He actually was a butcher by background, and really kind of showed us what it was like to work hard. In some cases, 6 to 7 days a week, morning till night, and we really appreciated his efforts and my mom's efforts as well, because my mom, after a while, went to work as well. She had a deli and a meat shop as well in town, and together they raised some pretty good kids and really taught us the value of just character and just your word is your word, your word is your bond, and just what it's like to be a tight-knit family here in the U.S. And my dad, I really kind of always listened to him because he's really wise around giving advice. And so right up until his last days a few years ago when he turned 90, he had passed away. But I was always fascinated with all his stories and just his wisdom. It was just remarkable. I spoke to the Detroit News after his death because they had a big article about him. And, I talked about the importance of that generation. The generation that was born in the 20s and 30s and 40s is probably the greatest generation of all time. They were very patriotic, true Americans. They wore their heart on their sleeve. Their word was their bond. And I think, we picked up a lot of what we thought were true American values about the importance of, faith, country, family, and the importance of just your word. And I think these days it's kind of all over the place, and I hope not to get political, that this country reunites here soon, because I see there's a lot of division on what's going on with the political climate, as well as with unfortunately the coronavirus and all the stuff that's going on has really divided the country, and I hope and pray that we reunite, because I've been overseas and several times to go and support and watch the boys wrestle, and I always look forward to coming back to the U.S. And I know that the boys represent San Marino. I understand that, and there's always that backlash, but they're Americans. And even though I was born in Lebanon, I'm an American that just happens to be very proud of my Lebanese descent. Just like the boys are San Marino citizens at birth, and they're proud to be San Marino citizens as well as of Lebanese descent. So, but first and foremost, they're Americans. So I'm going to set the record straight.
Amen, baby. You said it straight here, and I love that they're wrestling for San Marino. Just going back to your father, though, that's why I wanted to talk about him, is that hearing about these men and women who were salt to the earth, just never missed a day of work in their life, it just makes you kind of aspire to be like that. Why did your father come over here in the 60s when he did? And for folks who don't know, he was a 2-time Olympic wrestler, Olympic bronze medalist in greco. But why did he come over here with a family in tow? It's crazy.
So my dad, had a good life in Lebanon. He was one of the country's heroes because back in the day, Lebanon actually had a few really good wrestlers. He wrestled with the Taha brothers, who one of them did medal, I think a silver, and they were friends up until their last days with my dad, and they lived in Florida. But the war broke out. So my dad was in what they call the Bekaa Valley in a town called Zahle, and it's Zahle if you look it up. It's in northern Lebanon, and he lived in an old village that was just north of Beirut, and we had a house there, and it was a really good life because my grandfathers were in the ouzo business, and they distributed ouzo.
What's that?
I'm sorry.
What's ouzo?
Ouzo is it's a liqueur. A lot of the Greeks drink it, and it's real smooth. We'll have to try some soon because I've got a bottle from his village there. But so they distributed that for many years. Both my grandfather and would be my great uncle were in business together, and they also had a butcher shop. Hence why my dad became a butcher while he was wrestling. So, but the war broke out, I think, in 1967. And my dad wanted to take the family out of danger, even though it was kind of in the South. He just felt like it was time to move on. And what's interesting is we had U.S. roots. My grandfather was born in New York City and had a bar back in the 20s, and I believe, it was in the 20s. And one of the stories was my dad told me is that Al Capone used to come into my grandfather's bar. So that was a very interesting fact that back in the day that Capone and his crew used to come in, and my grandfather used to serve them. So long story short, my grandfather went back to Lebanon per his parents. They wanted him back to run the family business. And obviously they were in the ouzo business and eventually into the meat business. But he went back, had my father, so my father grew up there, and he might have gone to the United States as a child, and remembered New York City because somehow we had cousins that when I was little we'd go and visit them that were my dad's cousins. I'm sorry, and so. Long story short, so my dad ended up moving to the U.S. and bringing his family to the U.S. in 1967. My aunt was already here, and then slowly but surely, the rest of the family started moving. So some of his brothers and sisters he brought over, and again, this was the land of opportunity for a lot of foreign people, and I think they embrace the freedom, they embrace the opportunity to build your business, and it was just I heard my dad just say that over and over again. I've heard my uncle say it over and over again. How great, coming to the U.S. Everybody wanted to come to the U.S. Even though you had a good life in Lebanon, the life in the U.S. was just a little better, and I think people wanted to embrace that. So my dad came over in 1967. I was a young child at the time. Again, I was just approaching 2. My brother was just born. He was literally like 3 months old. So there was my younger brother, Sam. So we all came over, and we established a life in Warren, Michigan. And we really didn't wrestle until we were about 10 years old. So growing up, we would kind of wrestle around my dad, not knowing. My dad never really mentions anything. And the other interesting fact is my older brother never wrestled. He played baseball and basketball. And here his dad was a 2-time Olympian and wrestling in the Olympic Games, and my older brother doesn't wrestle. So go figure, So my dad was a real humble guy. My mom, I think, was a little resistant for us to wrestle. She believed in education, and she didn't want any distractions. And she felt that when my dad was traveling and wrestling, he was neglecting his business, which is true. He was neglecting the meat business that he probably would have inherited from my my grandfather. Instead, his younger brother inherited that business and ran it when we moved here. So we didn't start really wrestling. I think we had a few moves because he would wrestle with us in the living room and stuff. But one day I was in elementary school. I think it might have been in 6th grade or something like that. And there was a pamphlet going around about youth wrestling. It's called the Van Dyke Wrestling Club. And I took it home and I said, Dad, I want to do this. And my mom said, absolutely not. So we went, my brother Sam and I, we really, really convinced my dad just to take us to practice, to one practice. And and for some reason, if we didn't like it, we'd obviously not pursue it. But we went the first practice, and we both, my brother and I, we fell in love with it. It was really freestyle wrestling as well, and that's kind of where we started. And the first year, I think I might have been 10 years old, and my brother Sam was 9 or turning 9 or something like that, 8 years old. He might have been 8, and the rest is history. We stuck with youth wrestling. We had really, really good results. I think I might have won a state championship my first year, and it really came on. But I think I had a little bit of an advantage. I think, just kind of it really just screwing around with my dad. It really kind of helped me in my first year of freestyle wrestling. So, and go ahead.
So your first practice going into it, did you have any idea that your pops was a 2-time Olympian?
Nope, not at all. Nope. I didn't find that out till later on. And then all of a sudden, actually my mom had some stuff hidden in this little metal box, and all his medals and even some of his trophies were in a closet, and nothing was ever displayed. And then she brought out some old pictures, and then I just started putting the 2 and 2 together. I'm like, my dad wasn't just a wrestler. He was pretty damn good. So it's just, again, my dad was in my world, he was my only hero. It was my one and only hero is my father. So I always kind of looked up to him. And like I said, he was just a humble guy. So yeah, I didn't know that till later. And then I'm like, man, I think I got to really start learning from him. So he did work with us. And throughout our careers, even into college, he was still kind of adjusting some technical skills. And we went on to wrestle some greco and freestyle in the 90s. And still, we were still getting advice. We got a really good arm drag from our dad, and it worked quite well for us. So, and on both sides. And I think Miles still uses it. And Malik still uses it. They both have a pretty good drag as well. That came from our dad. And there's some other things that leg wrestling definitely came from my dad. And my dad wrestled both styles. He wrestled freestyle and greco. So he had a few moves up his sleeve in both styles. So he worked with us, and again, the rest is really history. You can tell by just talking about him how passionate I am about what he did for us, and also my mom. Our mom was the biggest fan, kind of like my wife is today with the boys. I think she's as big a fan, if not bigger, a fan with Miles and Malik. Her name is Marcy, but she really embraced the sport as well. And it's tough to be married to a wrestler.
It's tough.
Because, it's really tough. So we're going on 30 years here coming up in November. So we met in 1986. But yeah, I got a hats off to her, because she was my number one fan, and eventually the boys' number one fan. And she made the things happen for them to get registered with San Marino. It was all her work and her efforts. So wow. Hats off to her.
And congratulations on the marriage. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to ask you about fathering wrestlers, because we see a lot of crazies out there in the world. And most of the time, people who have had success in wrestling like yourself are not that person. It's usually people who have a chip on their shoulder or something to prove, and they're living through their kids. What about your dad, though, and you and your brother? Like, once you and Sam got into high school and college, was he hard on you? Was he pushing you guys? Was it more he was the dad versus the coach? What was that dynamic like?
So yeah, my dad never got involved with giving any advice around what to coach advice. He'd always say, listen to your coach Dale Barr, listen to your coach, Mark Torello or Steve Frazier. Just whatever they say, they know more than I. They always gave them the credit. And he was, behind the scenes. And my dad, I guess, what I remember him telling me, he goes, you know, and I know those dads, and my dad was very excited and passionate when we wrestled, and he would pace and he would yell, and he had a nice thick accent, and I liked it. It motivated me. My brother Sam didn't like it. He wanted him to stay quiet. So it's just interesting, the dynamics, the family dynamics is like one, you know, wants to hear dad, the other one doesn't. And it's kind of like Malik and Miles. For a while there, you know, Malik didn't want to hear me, but Miles did. And, you know, and now I'm to the point to where they both want to hear me. And hopefully Miles said and Malik said they could hear me at the World Championship. So you can only imagine how that voice carries. So we got to make sure that we separate passion, you know, with some of the dads, especially the dads. There's probably a few moms out there too that get a little crazy. But, you know, wrestling is not who you are. It's just something that you do. And I have to keep reminding myself that it's a chapter in your life, and we can't put all this pressure on our sons and daughters. I think we have to embrace the grind, as they say. You have to embrace the challenges. You have to embrace the losses and learn from them. And over the years, it's tough to see your kids lose. And my dad said it best. He says, when you lost, I felt it 10 times, but when you won, I felt it 10 times. And he would, you know, it would hurt him when we lost. It just, and not because, and he wouldn't get mad. He wouldn't neglect us or anything like that. It just, he knew how much we hurt, so he hurt. And that's kind of how I feel about the boys when they compete. You know, it's tough to see them lose just because I know how much effort they put into it, and I know how much time they put to it and the commitment. So it's tough, you know, and I think any dad that you ask, they're going to probably tell you the same thing. It's just, the reaction, though, is so important on how you react to these kids, and the importance of having a conversation and really understanding what's going through their head when their hand doesn't get raised, or even sometimes when their hand gets raised. You know, I've gotten to the point to where I used to kind of like, you know, what happened there? Now I try to say, you know, let them talk first and tell me, hey, Dad, you know, what do you think? I said, well, here's kind of what my thoughts were, but you know, we can fix this. You know, you have to stay positive. And you have to reinforce that, hey, that's part of the grind. Is you're going to win some and you're going to lose some. And you know, there's a very few people that will go through their careers undefeated. I know we had a few in college, but again, after college, that didn't happen, right? A few of them suffered some losses. So, and again, we don't want wrestling to define us. We want to have a good, balanced life, and it can't be the be-all and end-all, because at some point, you know, your wrestling days are going to end, and you're going to have to close that chapter and hopefully utilize the skills and the mindset and the challenges to propel you in your next venture in life and your career and your family and the way you handle some of those losses in wrestling. So that's the advice I'd give. It's just, you know, stay positive, give positive feedback, but sometimes don't give any feedback. If they're not asking for it, it's very, very hard. And it was hard for me just to keep my mouth shut and just let them have their moment and try not to bring it up, just because sometimes it's all they need is that downtime to kind of reflect on what happened in that match. And sometimes they got to figure it out. They don't need the outside advice. And it's best to kind of walk away. And it's hard to do, and you got to bite your lip and just walk away. And it is what it is, you know. It's just, and then maybe come back days later, and they may bring it up, and then you can talk about it. But right after the match, or right after, you know, that same day, if they're not saying anything, I think it's best just to stay quiet and let them come to you versus you come to them. It makes hopefully for a better longer term result.
It's tough though, right? Because you think you're helping them, but at the same time you think back, you know, if your dad wasn't like that, and you know, maybe that's the best way. And it's just tough though, because I mean, someone with your knowledge and your experience, I'm sure all you're trying to do is help. It's maybe sometimes it's your point, best just to give space.
Yeah. And like I said, I just feel like it's hard to do, and just got to keep, you know, hopefully practicing, you know, you know, just trying to know when to say something and know when to not say something. And it's a tough balance. It really is. You got to just, again, learn to bite your lip, and they'll usually open up. And that's happened a few times with both Malik and Miles, you know, so.
Well, speaking of, all this talk about parenting and coaching, before you were a parent, you wrestled at University of Michigan, and there were some really fun teams there. John Fisher, Pantaleo. I feel like all your kids went to Michigan at the same time. It's crazy. But you went there with your brother Sam, and you made the NCAA finals in '88. What are some of your early memories from Michigan and getting into that college room and the transition from high school to D1?
So I think first and foremost, I want to give credit to my teammates. I think ultimately, the culture that we had and the coaching that we had was probably second to none. Did we win an NCAA championship? Unfortunately not. Did we have the makings? Absolutely. But I really credit, the teammates and just the camaraderie that we have and the work ethic that we put in. We were not highly, with the exception of John Fisher, who was pretty darn tough, but he wasn't the number one guy in the country coming out of high school. And I definitely was. I was a one-time state champ. And, I don't even know that I was ranked in the top 50 coming in at the University of Michigan. And I always kind of tease, but, they recruited me to get to my brother Sam. Now, Sam, highly ranked, I think, when he finished up. He was a three-time finalist. He had one loss from his sophomore year to his senior year. He was 110-1. He was second, first. And he was a pretty special coming out of high school. So I would say they recruited me to get to him,
Smart move.
Yeah, it was a smart move. And he had a great career as well. So, he unfortunately was ranked second in the country and got injured. But I think he would have had a better result than I had he been healthy. He blew his knee out, but he had some just unbelievable matches. But, we had a really, really good, tough room. Again, we worked really hard. We had great coaching. And, I attribute my success to the culture and working out with guys like Joe Pantaleo, who, iron sharpens iron. We're about the same weight. He was a 58-pounder. I was a 67-pounder. And I had guys that were a little older than me, like Kevin Hill, who I had worked out with. And believe it or not, Scott Recksteiner, who was Big Papa Pump, but he was a 77-pounder when I was transitioning to 167. And
wait, the WWE wrestler, Big Papa Pump?
The WWE, yeah. So I'd worked out with him, and I had some really good workout partners that kind of beat up on me and made me better. And Joe and I kind of were always, once Joe came into Michigan, kind of like Alec and Malik, they both kind of like really help each other, I think, succeed. And obviously Alec had phenomenal results. But Alec is Joe's nephew. He's actually the son of Mike Pantaleo, just for the record. But Joe absolutely influenced Alec throughout his career, and Joe was a really good coach and really knew the technical aspects of the wrestling and the mindset. So, but we just had a great team with a great coaching staff, and I don't know if I got lucky or what it was, but I knew that with work ethic and a good room, a lot can be accomplished. And it's kind of the mindset and the way I run my company is that you show me somebody that's a grinder that may not have the best talent, and we can make them into a very successful, advisor. And I feel the same for college wrestling. I don't think you always have to recruit the number one guy in the country. I think you got to recruit somebody like Dan Gable. And I always looked up to the wisdom that Dan Gable brought to college wrestling. And I've had the opportunity to speak with him on a number of occasions. I think he has tremendous respect for the team that beat him in 1989. And, anytime I run into him, he always stops and we have a nice conversation. I always have just tremendous respect for Dan Gable. If I have to idolize anybody outside of my dad, it would be Dan Gable. With all due respect to the greats like John Smith and Cale Sanderson, Gable's still at the top just because he did some things in college coaching and in Olympic wrestling that you've never seen before, and
the coaching aspect is incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just he is unbelievable. I mean, for what he did in college wrestling. So anytime Dan speaks, people have to listen. And I just remember talking to him about like recruiting and how, hey, coach, what do you look for? When you're going out to Fargo, what are the guys you look for? And he looks for the guys that just hate losing more than they like winning, and it's that guy, that mindset that, it's the guy that is just a grinder. It's going to work hard. They're coachable, and you put them in the right culture. And Gable was turning those guys into national champs and sometimes multiple-time national champs. That doesn't mean he didn't recruit the number one guy in the country, But if you look at the makeup of Iowa wrestling over the last several decades under Gable and others, they're not always capturing the number one guy, and so I look at that. That's what coaching's all about. If you can develop that guy that's just, one-time, two-time state champ, tough, they got to have some skills. You can't, assume you're going to take a walk-on and make him into national champ, although that might have happened a few times. But if you could take a guy, again, that's a one-time state champ or maybe placed third twice, and in some of these tough states like Pennsylvania, Ohio, Iowa, Michigan, goes on and on. But you could take a few of those guys and you can really develop them. Then that to me is all coaching. That's what culture is about. That's what coaching's about. You got to really believe in the guy. And that's the beauty of Gable. He was able to help translate the guy that wanted to win into having that national champ mindset. It wasn't about being an All-American. He wanted you to say that I want to be a national champ, and even a national champ my freshman year. That's the attitude that Gable wanted to recruit to Iowa. And I think that's kind of where, I see, Michigan going in that direction of really developing that talent. And under Coach Bormet's leadership, it says take a guy, because the same thing goes for, Miles. Miles was maybe fourth, fifth rank coming out of high school, and he had pretty damn good results, as a freshman, and was fourth in the NCAAs as a redshirted freshman. And so that to me is what development's all about. And you just gotta kind of know the character of the guy and make sure some of the off the mat antics and decisions are really good decisions. You got to look at the family dynamics and say, all right, does this guy really have the family support they're going to need? Because, it takes a village to create a great wrestler. It's not just the coaching. It's not just the culture, but the family dynamics as well. And we just talked about the dads, right? We talked about, hey, this guy has to fight two battles, right? He's got to fight the battle on the mat, and he's got to fight the battle off the mat with maybe the family. And sometimes they're walking out there on eggshells and pins and needles, and they can't feel relaxed. And again, who I kind of look to, and again, they've had, championship after championship, but they feel really relaxed as Penn State. Kalis Anderson does a wonderful job of making sure that his team is ready and relaxed, and really just going out there and having fun. And that's really the name of the game, is going out there, somehow being dialed in, but at the same time being relaxed enough to you're not worried about making mistakes. And you see some of the best get taken down, and they still end up teching the guy, right? Yeah. So there's something to be said about having fun in the room and then having fun when you're out there and how that translates. So it's a happy medium, especially with this generation. You can't, be so hard on them that everything is just work without having a good time and putting yourself in different positions and just really flowing in those different positions, and really having a better understanding of how to maybe scramble and enjoy kind of like what that's like. So.
And I know we talked about it beforehand, but Sean Bormet's, there's not a bigger fan of Sean Bormet than me. I love, that guy, and following him from overtime to Michigan, just incredible. What have you seen just from getting close to the program again in terms of his leadership and some things that you really like what he's doing right now with the guys?
Well, this Sean Bormet has a very relaxed approach, and it's easy to wrestle for him. He's extremely technical. He's very calm. So it's nice to have that in the corner to where he's got your back. He doesn't get overly excited, but he's good to have in the corner. He's absolutely phenomenal in the room, and the way he structures it. He's a very structured. He has very structured practices. I know that he writes every pretty much practice out, before he delivers it, and very technical and very calm, and just so passionate. Though he's that great leader. It's kind of more the quiet leader and reserved. Although you can push a hot button, especially with some bad calls, and I've seen him kind of out of his chair when he knows that the ref made a bad call, and you can he delivers it, and so, don't underestimate his passion, because it's there. It's just, he's very calm. And I know in talking to Malk and Miles and having them in the corner, they feel really relaxed going out there. And I think that's when you can wrestle your best. You're dialed in, but you feel relaxed. You don't feel the tension from the coaching and from the family. So, I just have such tremendous respect, like you do, for Sean. He's just he is the guy that I think is going to help Michigan and propel Michigan to a national championship. And he's not just doing it on talent alone. He's doing it with his structure. He's doing it with his approach, and just his passion for greatness. And I think it's very calculated. I think he really thinks things through, and he's very thorough in his approach. So he's a little different than some of the other coaches maybe you've seen out there. But, that's kind of what I like to see in the Michigan program. And hats off to Joe McFarland, because Joe McFarland, he had his heyday at Michigan. He absolutely had some peaks in his career, to where he was able to deliver an NCAA second place team back around the Ryan Bertines and Torella era, to where, in Tannenbaum, I mean, it just did a wonderful job with that talent in the room. And it's like any coach, after a while, it gets very difficult to always hit on every cylinder. And that's going to happen to the best of the best coaches. So, but hats off to Joe McFarland and the job that he did. And he helped Sean really kind of help mold Sean into, I think, the leadership. Because I think the assistant coaches need that. They need that time as an assistant coach before I think they become head coaches. And every great program will show that.
And I also love how Sean was the CEO of a business for 10 years before that. And I think that's essential in college wrestling. I think you think about any big time sport, the head coach is as much a CEO as they are X's and O's. And that is crucial in terms of getting support from the community and from the alumni, so on and so forth. And knowing you're a businessman, I did want to spend some time talking about that. So now you're the CEO and founding partner of, hit me with the names, Wealth Strategies.
Wealth Strategies.
Yeah. Thank you. I was thinking Securian for some reason. I used to sell to Securian, and they're your broker-dealer, right?
Yeah, broker-dealer, yes.
Yeah. So tell me about the early days, though, at MetLife. Were you cold calling, pounding the phones, working your way up?
So I actually celebrated 30 years in the industry September 1st. And so I'm proud to say that 30 years. I spent my entire career with New England, which got absorbed by MetLife. And in my early days, it was a grind, and basically everything I learned from wrestling and how wrestling changed my life is just I applied it to my business and had success. I didn't have immediate success because I needed to have patience first. Right? Nothing happens overnight. Rome wasn't built overnight. So I need to constantly remind myself, if I do X, I'm not going to get Y. Sometimes you can get that in wrestling. You can't get it in the business world. So you got to be patient. And I always had, I guess, an interest in the financial world. And so again, that discipline, that teamwork, the skills that you learn on the wrestling mat, as long as you are open to yourself and applying that to every aspect of your life, I think you can get great results eventually. And that's actually what happened to me in this particular career path. So I came on, I struggled. And unfortunately, in 1992, I got married in 1990. In 1992, we built a house. And I had a big mortgage, and then my wife got pregnant, and my mom unfortunately got cancer, all in the same year. And I happened to not make the Olympic team. I was planning on making the Olympic team. I had bouts going back and forth with Gordy Morgan. I'd beaten Gordy Morgan. He was the number one guy, and had a really good run in Greco-Roman wrestling at 163 pounds. And so my heart was broken from my Olympic dream. I kind of busted up my ribs and did not have the kind of national open that I wanted. I placed, I think I was fourth in the national open. I went on to the world team trials, won some matches, and became the second or third alternate in 92. But, that wasn't one of my goals. My goal was to make the team and get a medal, for the U.S. And so my wife was pregnant. My mom had cancer, and I was struggling. I was struggling emotionally. I was struggling a little bit financially. And, I think what got me through it was the ability to have that wrestling mindset and be able to, weather the storm, if you will. And fortunately, it all worked out. Unfortunately, my mom passed away in 1993. But at the same time, a blessing my blessing was born. My daughter Marissa was born in 1993, a month later, and I think she saved me a little bit. Definitely look forward to having her and raising her, and then obviously the boys came right after, and we had a wonderful small family that we're very proud of. So it got me through it, but 9 years in. I decided to transition in 1999 to more of a leadership role. I was asked by the vice president. I was helping kind of mentor some guys and help them with some of the recruiting, kind of like we do for college wrestling. And then I decided to get into management. And then within a few years, they provided me an office out in Grand Rapids and an opportunity in 2004. I took that office over. I was able to take the culture and turn it around and take the results and turn it around. And eventually they gave me an entire state. And then that's kind of where MetLife was involved. We were actually became the national firm of the year for MetLife in 2008. And we had the worst economy in the country. So I attribute all that to my wrestling days and some of the things I learned to, be a great leader and, surround myself with great people. I always talk about the importance of surrounding yourself with people who are better than you. And I had the fortitude to go out and hire people who complemented my skill sets. And we worked really hard together. We rolled up our sleeves, and together we built a phenomenal and great firm for MetLife. And eventually MetLife gave me pretty much everything that was in Michigan, from MetLife to MetLife Resources to England Financial. I ran that entire distribution until 2016. And we were consistently one of the top firms in the country, one of the best places to work in the country. And I attributed that to just some of the things I learned at the University of Michigan and at my high school, Warren Lincoln. So that's where wrestling truly changed my life. And then in 2016, MetLife decided to shut down their distribution. I then partnered up with Securian and started Wealth Strategies Financial Group. And again, in a very short time, I think we're going to become one of their top firms. So we're hitting on all cylinders right now. Our recruiting is off the charts. Our results are off the charts. We had a phenomenal year last year. We were able to receive the prestigious gold standard for Gamma International, and that's on a global scale for our recruiting and results efforts. And that's, again, I hats off to my team. I have a great team at Wealth Strategies Financial Group, and I enjoy going to work every single day.
Man, I love the passion. And I'm in software sales, and I just think sales and whether it's being a financial advisor, and technically that's not sales, but in many ways it is. Wrestling just lends itself to that hunter mentality. And sales is a lot like it, because sometimes you're on a team of 10 other reps and you hit your number and they don't. It's you still feel okay. Whereas like in wrestling, if you win a match and your team doesn't, you still feel pretty good about yourself.
Yeah,
it just reminds me of it so much. But I wanted to go back to that period in '92, because I look at someone like you, wonderful family, successful career. I think, man, this guy has just always been super confident and never gone through any issues like that. So I was fascinated to hear that you were going through a little bit of a kind of an emotional low point, and who could blame you? So how did you, if you look back, and if there's anyone listening now who's struggling with some depression or just kind of in a funk, how did you get out of that? Was it, just time or anything you can remember?
Yeah, well, I think it was faith. And, like I said, and the people that I surround myself with, from my friends to my family and my coworkers, it was a really tough time. My mother, was actually, it's her birthday today, which I think she would have been 80. She was 84 today, but she died at 58. And it was a very, very difficult time, just because, again, I can deal with, not making the Olympic team. I could deal with struggling, with my job because I was devoting a lot of time to training and wrestling and trying to balance, my marriage and everything else. But, it was a rough patch. And I think, again, your faith is very important. Your family is very important. Your friends are very important. All the F's, I think that's what helps you. And it's okay to raise your hand and ask for help and have that conversation. It's even okay to go, and get some counseling and, work through some of those things and challenges that you're going through. And I did. I went and talked to somebody, and was able to, some kind of spill my guts and some of the emotions that I was feeling. And they were all over the place. It's a real tough time in my life. And I think that's kind of what defines you, is some of the scars, during that period of your life. And, but you'll get through it. You get through it. You got to have faith, and you got to reach out to family and loved ones and your friends, and you'll get through it. The human spirit is unbelievable, and the resiliency that we all have if we just allow ourselves to ask for help and get the support. There's nothing we can't do, and nothing we can't accomplish, and nothing we can't get through. I'm an optimist at the end of the day. I wake up with a good attitude. That's one of the things we can always control when we wake up, is our attitude. We can't really control what happens to us, but we control how we deal with it.
I appreciate you sharing that. And it meant a lot to me, and I'll go back and listen to that a number of times. The last thing we'll close with, and this is a perfect segue, is you said, when you wake up in the morning, you choose the attitude you have. I want to go back to March 1988. You were unseeded and had just an incredible NCAA tournament. Do you remember where you were at, where your headspace was at, Thursday morning as the tournament was starting, 1988?
Well, I will relate it to Miles's draw at the World Championships, and oh shucks, man, I've got some workout, cut out in front of me. So the first match I had was against a couple-time All-American named Craig Martin out of Missouri. So that's who I drew first round. And, I think the importance, and I think Mark Turella one time shared, wrestling is that, once you get to a certain level, it's pretty much a mental game. And I had just this mental attitude. I was definitely in the zone. And I really felt like throughout that tournament, I felt like the old Rocky theme, like I could eat nails, and I was in the zone, and I felt like, and I felt invincible. I really went out there with the attitude that I was not going to get beat, and I warmed up really well. And what's interesting is I got injured, my knee, and it's still injured today. But at the Big Tens, I was wrestling. It was trying to remember one of the guys from Minnesota who was pretty good. He was an All-American, and I was a leg wrestler, and he ended up ripping my knee up a little bit, and I had a torn meniscus and a torn ACL going in the NCAA tournament. So I had to kind of make up for that with mindset. And I literally, every match, I was icing my knee, and I never got it repaired. It kind of helped repair itself. It wasn't really that bad, but both my meniscus and my ACL were torn, slightly torn, I should say. And so it was, I already had, the odds against me going into that tournament. And I think the importance of mindset and belief, and just, again, having the team that I had around me and the coaching staff, I felt like I walked out there against Craig Martin, and I actually beat up on him. I ended up beating him 12-5 in that match. So I had a really good first match, so that kind of gave me some more belief. And then I had John Coles, and John Coles, I think, was the number 4 seed out of BYU. Mm-hmm. I think he had one loss going into the NCAA tournament. And he took me down and I think tilted me right away. And I was down 5-0. And I came back and I tied the match up 6-6. And went in overtime, and then I think I ended up beating him 5-0 or something like that in overtime. So I got through that match and got me to the quarterfinals, in which I wrestled D. Camillus, who was, I think, one of the Denver Broncos interim head coach. He went on to the football scene, but he was out of Wyoming, and he was an All-American that year, and I ended up beating him 5-0. And then I got to the semifinals against Jim Gresley, and Jim Gresley had just almost teched. He was about to tech, but he ended up pinning the number 1 seed. He was just a monster. He was having he was having a better tournament than I was having. So I had my, obviously, odds were stacked against me because he just beat up on the number 1 seed and then pinned him. And that number 1 seed kind of took it to me earlier in the season, who was David Lee out of Wisconsin. So I went out against Jim. we tied up, and then I took his head off, and I headlocked him and pinned him in like I think 33 seconds. So, it was at the time one of the fastest pins it might have been to still be one of the fastest pins in the NCAA history. So I was proud of that moment. My brother Sam actually gave me a little advice, and I kind of wasn't thinking about a headlock, but he came out there, with a real strong tie, and I just kind of felt, it was there, and I took it, and I took his head off, and ended up pinning him, and I got to the finals. And the issue that I had, I think, is having to wait. I was ready to wrestle the next hour. I felt like, man, I wish we could have just continued this tournament, because I was on a mission. And then I think I had 24 hours before I wrestled Mike Van Arsdale, and hats off to Mike Van Arsdale from Iowa State. I ended up losing to him 8-3 and didn't have the match I wanted to have. I warmed up well. He felt so big. I think he was 13 pounds over the night before. He ended up making what he needed to make, but he felt like a monster. I went out there, I warmed up, and he just felt so much bigger than I mean, I think I was like, I want to say I was 2 pounds under after my semifinal match. I was not a big 167 pounder. And then back then we got weight allowance. So I think we got a pound or 2 pounds or whatever. I ended up having to wrestle like 169. I might have weighed in at 167 after my semifinal match, just because I felt like I did not want to cut a lot of weight. I thought that hindered my workouts and my ability to give 100% in my workouts. So I didn't cut a lot of weight in college. And but yeah, I think I was 2 pounds under after my semis. So like I said, no excuses. I lost fair and square, and just didn't have the kind of match that I thought I should have had. And, I felt ready, but I didn't feel like I did the night before. I just felt like those first few days, I was on a mission, and it was a good run. It was a really good run.
And how cool was it to have your brother there on the floor in the warm-up area with you most of that tournament?
It was awesome. Sam was he was special. He was right there, and we're same thing. Iron sharpens iron. We worked out quite a bit in college. We worked out quite a bit after college. He was another guy that wrestled and trained for the 92 Olympics. And we really helped one another. And back then, I think we even had the Dean family. I was working out with Dave Dean and Steve Goss back then, and Steve Frazier. We were all kind of workout partners in Greco, and along with my brother Sam. So pretty good workout partners to have.
For sure. Those are fun times, and I really appreciate you sharing all these stories. It's been an awesome conversation. Mr. Amine,
absolutely.
Thank you very much, sir.
Yes. Yeah. Call me Mike.
Mike, for sure.
Absolutely. But I enjoyed being on your podcast. I'm a big fan as well of your podcast and you. And I like your words of encouragement, especially on Twitter, and really appreciate it. And like I said, I love this sport. One of the things I did want to kind of close out with is wrestlers in business is so important. And we launched it in Michigan. It's really taken off as well. And I really want to encourage our folks to get out there and open up chapters. And it's great to have wrestlers helping each other in the business as well as the trades. We just have such a great community, and I can't say enough good things about our wrestling community. So all the best.
What's it called? Wrestlers in Business?
Yeah, Wrestlers in Business. We have a Michigan chapter. There's an Ohio chapter. There's a New York chapter. They're pretty much starting to branch out throughout the country. And Mike Moyer and what he does for our sport, I can't say enough about Mike Moyer. He's in charge of the Coaches Association. He's also the president of the Wrestlers in Business National. And he kind of came in a few times to help support us. So, but absolutely just want to keep encouraging our wrestling community to be a part of that. And they always host every year at the NCAA. They host a huge event that's pretty much sold out. So
beautiful. Well, I'll link to that in the show notes, and we'll have to. What's that drink your grandfather used to distribute? Ouzo.
Ouzo, but it's called Arak, A-R-A-K, but it's Ouzo. It's the same. It's a liqueur. It's a licorice liqueur.
Get it on ice. I'm heading to Michigan.
Absolutely.
Let's do it.
Yes, let's have one. All right. Well,
thanks,
hopefully
Mike.
have something to celebrate. Take care, Ryan.
Take care.
Great being on your podcast. Take care.
It's
Bye-bye.
an honor.